Welcome to HOA Stories.
Please stop! I haven't done anything wrong!
You have the right to remain silent. Stand up and let's go.
When I bought our cabin up in the Smoky Mountains, I thought it would be the perfect weekend escape for my wife, Emily, and me. It sat at the edge of a small private lake, surrounded by tall pine trees, wildflowers, and that crisp, fresh air you can't bottle no matter how hard city folks try. The only sound at night was the low hum of crickets, the gentle rush of wind through the trees, and the occasional splash of a trout breaking the surface of the water. We worked hard for that peace, and we earned it. What I didn't know then was that behind that serenity lurked one of the most controlling, power-hungry HOA presidents I'd ever encounter, a woman everyone in the neighborhood called Karen Mullins. She wasn't your average suburban busybody. No, Karen treated the homeowners association like her personal kingdom. She'd show up unannounced, clipboard in hand, snapping pictures of porch lights that were too warm in tone, or of trash cans that hadn't been rolled in by exactly 7 p.m. sharp. I'd heard stories about her from neighbors before we even closed on the cabin, tales of her sending fines over improperly aligned garden gnomes, and once even threatening to have a family evicted because their kid's skateboard ramp disturbed the visual harmony of the street. But I figured we'd be safe. Our cabin wasn't technically part of the main neighborhood. It sat on a separate parcel of land, privately owned, separated by a dirt road that wasn't maintained by the HOA. Still, Karen seemed to think everything within shouting distance of her cul-de-sac fell under her jurisdiction. That became clear the day she showed up for her so-called routine cabin inspection. It was early spring, that time when the snow had just melted off the hillsides, and the roads were still muddy from runoff. I was out front stacking firewood when I saw her car pull up, a silver crossover with a big HOA decal plastered across the door like some kind of law enforcement badge. She stepped out wearing her usual uniform, pressed khakis, a tucked-in polo with the HOA logo, a baseball cap that read, "Community First," and that smug expression like she was the sheriff of a town no one else agreed needed one. "Morning," I called out, trying to keep things civil. She gave a curt nod and immediately started looking around like she was inspecting a crime scene. "You're the new owner of Lot 14B. "Yeah," I said. "That's me. Name's Jack." She scribbled something down on her clipboard. "I'll need access to the cabin interior today. We're conducting spring compliance checks, safety, structural integrity, pest management. It's all part of the HOA's Community Wellness Initiative." I couldn't help but laugh. "Ma'am, I think you've got the wrong lot. This cabin isn't part of your HOA. My property line starts at the bridge over there." Karen frowned, like I'd just challenged her divine authority. "All properties within the Mountain Retreat Zone fall under the jurisdiction of Cedar Pines Homeowners Association." "Funny," I said, "because I checked with the county assessor before buying this place. It's marked as independent rural property, not under Cedar Pines management." That didn't seem to slow her down. "That must be an error in their system," she said flatly, already walking toward my porch. "Hey, hold up," I called after her. "You can't just walk into my house." She turned, lips tight. "If you're compliant, you've got nothing to hide." That's when Emily came out. My wife's a calm, measured woman, the kind who can talk her way out of most confrontations without ever raising her voice. But when she saw Karen on our steps, clipboard ready, her patience evaporated like fog in sunlight. "Can I help you, ma'am?" she asked, stepping between Karen and the door. Karen adjusted her cap, clearly annoyed at being challenged. "Yes, I need to conduct a mandatory property compliance inspection. HOA Policy 4.3 requires all cabin owners." Emily cut her off with a polite but firm tone. "This property isn't part of your HOA. We've already verified it with the county. If you'd like to check the deed, I can show you. Karen's face tightened. Ma'am, refusing an inspection can result in fines, penalties, and even suspension of access to community facilities. Emily tilted her head. Community facilities? You mean the pool and the clubhouse we don't have access to because we're not members? Karen's confidence wavered for the first time. We'll see about that, she muttered. If you're hiding something, ma'am, I interrupted, you're trespassing. Please step off my property. But Karen didn't move. Instead, she pulled out her phone like she was about to record us, and that's when I saw Emily's expression harden. Without another word, my wife reached into her pocket and hit the cabin's smart security app. A loud beep echoed through the woods, followed by the mechanical click of our security shutters locking into place over the doors and windows. Karen froze, startled. What is that? Security system, Emily said evenly. It activates when someone refuses to leave after being asked. Karen took a nervous step back, but she tried to recover her composure. You can't do this, I'm conducting an official HOA inspection. On property you don't control, I said. So unless you've got a warrant or a badge, you're done here. For a moment, I thought she was going to call the cops. She kept glancing between us and her phone, her jaw working furiously. Then she finally said, fine. I'll be filing a complaint with the board. You'll regret this. Emily smiled sweetly. You have a great day, ma'am. Karen stomped back to her car, muttering something about non-compliant residents and legal repercussions. She spun her tires a little in the mud as she left, and I figured that was the end of it. But I should have known better. Karen wasn't the type to let things go. Over the next few weeks, strange things started happening. First, our mail started showing up late, or not at all. Then, a citation notice was taped to our gate claiming we owed community maintenance fees. It looked official, printed on HOA letterhead and signed by Karen herself. Emily and I laughed it off at first, but when the next notice came with a fine amount listed in bold red letters, $750, I knew she was escalating. I drove down to the county office again to confirm the property status. The clerk, an older guy named Raymond, shook his head. Nope, you're still independent. That HOA's been trying to annex surrounding lots for years, but the county keeps denying it. I asked him if I should report her. He chuckled. If she tries to enforce anything, just document it. She's been warned before. So I did. Every notice, every message, every unwanted inspection attempt, I saved it all. A month later, things hit a new level. I came home from a supply run to find tire tracks in our driveway and muddy footprints on the porch. Someone had tried to pry open the back window. The security system had triggered a photo capture, and when I checked the footage, my jaw dropped. It was Karen. There she was, in broad daylight, creeping around my back porch with a flashlight and clipboard like some wannabe detective. She was snapping pictures through the windows, peering inside, and even tried the door handle twice. Emily saw the footage and immediately called the sheriff's office. When the deputy arrived, a big guy named Holt with a calm demeanor, he watched the footage, then let out a low whistle. That's breaking and entering, plain and simple. We filed a report that same day. Holt promised to handle it. You'll get a case number soon, he said. If she comes back, call us right away. 3 days later, I was splitting wood again when I heard tires crunching up the road. Karen's car stopped at the end of the driveway. She stepped out, hands on hips, glaring like she was about to issue a citation to the sky itself. You think you can threaten me with the sheriff? She shouted. Karen, I said, walking toward her, you trespassed. There's video proof. I was performing an authorized inspection, she barked back. Your property falls under HOA expansion zoning. I'm within my rights. I smiled faintly. Funny you say that. Because Deputy Holt disagrees. Her face flickered with something, fear, maybe, before she covered it with anger again. You'll regret this, she hissed. You and your wife both. That's when Emily came out again, calm as ever. She held up her phone, recording. Karen, you're on camera, and this is your final warning, leave our property, or we'll have you removed. Karen glared at us, turned, and drove off. But that day, the look on her face told me something was brewing. Something bigger than just an HOA vendetta. I had no idea that the next time she'd come here, she wouldn't be the one holding the clipboard. She'd be the one in handcuffs. The morning after Karen's last outburst, the mountains were eerily quiet. The usual rhythm of birdsong and rustling leaves was replaced by a tense stillness that made the air feel heavy. I sat on the porch with my coffee, watching mist curl off the lake, trying to shake off the feeling that something bad was about to happen. Emily joined me a few minutes later, barefoot, her hair pulled back, still wearing her flannel robe. She handed me her phone silently. The HOA's online portal was open. There, in bold letters, was a new notice: violation, unauthorized construction, property modification without approval. Fine, $2,500. Action required immediately. I frowned. We haven't built anything. Emily scrolled down. Attached were pictures of our woodpile, our new bird feeder, and the solar motion light I'd mounted over the back door last week. She's really reaching, I muttered. Emily sighed. She's not going to stop until someone makes her. That's when my phone buzzed, a text from Deputy Holt. Holt, got something you'll want to see. You around today? Within an hour, his patrol truck rolled up the gravel road. He stepped out with a folder under his arm, his boots crunching against the frost. Morning, he said, tipping his hat. Mind if I come in for a bit? We sat at the kitchen table, and he spread out a few printed pages, screenshots, scanned documents, and an email trail. I did some digging, he began. Seems your friend Karen's been filing complaints not just with the HOA, but with the county zoning board, code enforcement, and even animal control. Animal control? Emily raised an eyebrow. For what? Holt chuckled. Apparently, she reported your dog as a dangerous unlicensed animal. Problem is, you don't have a dog. I exhaled sharply, shaking my head. So she's fabricating reports now. That's what it looks like. And it's not the first time, Holt said, flipping a page. There are half a dozen complaints under her name, going back years. Some of them resulted in fines for people that were later reversed after investigation. He leaned back in his chair. She's got a reputation, Jack. Folks down in the lower valley filed restraining orders against her last year for harassment. One guy even had her banned from his property after she trespassed with a drone. Emily looked stunned. And the HOA still lets her run the place? HOA boards are like little fiefdoms, Holt said. As long as she pays her dues and keeps the paperwork neat, the other members either look the other way or are too scared to cross her. I rubbed the back of my neck. So what can we do? Well, the trespassing report you filed is active. If she sets foot on your property again without cause, we can arrest her. But, he hesitated, tapping his folder. There's something else. He pulled out one more document, a printed copy of a bench warrant. My stomach dropped when I saw the name. Defendant, Karen Mullins. Charge, contempt of court/failure to appear. Emily leaned forward. You're kidding. Holt shook his head. Nope. Seems she's been dodging a civil hearing from 2 counties over. Neighbor dispute over land boundaries. She ignored 3 summonses, and the court finally issued a warrant last month. I couldn't believe it. The woman who acted like she was the law had won out for her. Holt stood and slid the paper back into his folder. Look, I'm not telling you to provoke her. But if she shows up again, don't confront her directly. Just call me. After he left, Emily sat at the table, staring at the wood grain, deep in thought. Do you think she knows? I shook my head. Probably not. If she did, she wouldn't be parading around like she's untouchable. But Karen wasn't done with us yet. The next weekend, we drove into town for supplies. When we came back, a bright orange sticker was plastered across our gate, notice of imminent property review, access required within 24 hours. I could practically feel my blood pressure spike. Emily peeled the sticker off carefully. This woman's insane, she whispered. That night, we installed 2 new security cameras, one facing the driveway, another by the back trail. I synced both to my phone. Around midnight, the motion alert went off. I opened the feed, and there she was again. Karen. Wearing a headlamp and carrying a small step stool, she was peering through the living room window. She pressed her face to the glass like she was looking for evidence of a crime. Then she tried the doorknob again. I hit the panic alarm on the app. A floodlight flared, and the alarm screamed through the night. Karen jumped, stumbled backward, and dropped her clipboard in the dirt before sprinting toward her car. I was already outside when she hit the road, taillights bouncing through the trees. Emily came out behind me, robe flapping in the wind. That's it, I said through clenched teeth. She's gone too far. The next morning, Holt came back, took our footage, and made a few calls. This time, he said, we've got enough. He wrote up a trespassing citation, filed the report, and radioed dispatch. If she shows up again, we'll serve her the warrant while we're at it. Days passed. Then a week. No Karen. No notices. No letters. The silence felt unnatural, like the mountain was holding its breath. Emily started to relax again. She'd even unpacked her sketching supplies and was drawing down by the dock one morning when I heard tires crunching up the drive again. I looked up, heart pounding. A familiar silver crossover came into view. I swear, time slowed down. Karen got out, sunglasses on, clipboard in hand, every inch of her screaming defiance. She didn't even hesitate this time. She marched right up the porch steps like she owned the place. I stepped out, blocking the doorway. You really don't learn, do you? I'm here on official HOA business, she snapped. There's been a complaint about unapproved land use. I couldn't help but smirk. Funny, the only complaint around here is you. She pointed her pen at me. You are interfering with a lawful inspection. Step aside, or I'll report you for obstruction. Before I could answer, a second vehicle pulled up behind her, a white sheriff's SUV. Deputy Holt stepped out, hand resting casually on his belt. Morning, Karen, he said evenly. Mind if I have a word? Karen blinked, thrown off. Oh, Deputy Holt. Good, you're here. Maybe you can explain to this man that he's in violation of community policy. Holt chuckled. Actually, ma'am, I'm here for a different reason. He opened his folder, pulled out a paper, and handed it to her. Karen Mullins, this is a warrant for your arrest, issued by Blount County Superior Court. Her face went pale. What? That's impossible. I'm a respected member of this community. Holt's tone stayed calm but firm. You failed to appear in court for 3 summonses. You've been officially listed as a fugitive from civil process. Karen's clipboard dropped from her hands, papers scattering across the porch like startled birds. This is a mistake, she stammered. I was never notified. Emily stepped out beside me, arms folded. Maybe next time you should check your own mail instead of other people's. Karen glared at her, but the fight had drained out of her voice. You can't arrest me. I'm on duty. Holt sighed. You're not law enforcement, ma'am. You're an HOA president. Big difference. He gently but firmly turned her around, cuffed her wrists, and read her rights. Karen sputtered protests all the way to the patrol car, insisting this was some bureaucratic misunderstanding. As Holt guided her into the back seat, she twisted around to look at us. You'll pay for this, she shouted. All of you will. Emily and I just stood there, watching her drive away, the sound of the tires fading into the pines. For a long time, neither of us said a word. The wind whispered through the trees, the lake shimmered in the morning light, and for the first time since we'd bought the cabin, it felt like the mountain exhaled. Finally, Emily looked at me and said softly, "You think she'll actually face consequences?" I shrugged. If there's justice in this world, she will. But deep down, I knew Karen wasn't the kind of woman to give up easily. And I was right. Because 2 weeks later, something landed in our mailbox that changed everything, an official envelope from the state attorney's office. Inside wasn't a complaint. It was a subpoena. The subpoena sat on our kitchen table like a live wire, the paper edges still crisp from the envelope. The letterhead bore the seal of the Tennessee State Attorney's Office, and underneath, in bold black type, were the words, "Notice of Deposition, State vs. Cedar Pines Homeowners Association." Emily read it twice before speaking. They want us to testify? I nodded slowly, my eyes scanning the paragraph again. Looks like it. Says here we're witnesses in an ongoing investigation into misuse of community funds and unlawful property enforcement. She let out a low whistle. So Karen wasn't just harassing us, she was running a racket. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the rafters. Figures. Anyone that obsessed with power usually has something to hide. 2 days later we drove down the mountain to the county courthouse. It was a clear spring morning, sunlight spilling through the trees, but my stomach felt knotted the whole ride. The courthouse sat in the heart of a sleepy mountain town, brick facade, white columns, an old clock that chimed every hour. We parked out front and checked in at reception. A young investigator named Mara Jefferson met us in the hallway. She was maybe in her early 30s, smart eyes, hair tied back, blazer neatly pressed. "Mr. and Mrs. Hayes?" she asked. "That's us," I said. "Thanks for coming in. I know it's short notice. We've been collecting evidence against Cedar Pines HOA for a while, but your report was the missing puzzle piece." Emily frowned. "You mean Karen?" Mara gave a half-smile. "Karen's the president on paper, but we've discovered she's been funneling HOA dues into personal accounts, vacation stays, cosmetic renovations, even a new SUV registered under her cousin's name. She's also been forging compliance citations to inflate fines." I whistled softly. "So she's not just power-hungry. She's stealing." "Exactly," Mara said. "And your footage of her trespassing gives us probable cause that she was using inspections as a pretext to gather personal data, photos, property layouts, even gate codes." Emily crossed her arms. She tried to bully everyone into thinking she was untouchable. Mara nodded. "People like her thrive on fear. You two standing up to her made others come forward. We've got 8 new statements in the last week." She led us into a small conference room where a recorder sat on the table. We spent the next hour answering questions: how long we'd owned the cabin, every encounter we'd had with Karen, every letter, every video clip. Mara listened carefully, typing notes. When we finished, she said, "This'll help more than you know. Once the audit's done, there'll be indictments. As we left, she added quietly, and, for what it's worth, she's still denying everything. That night, back at the cabin, the mountains looked different, peaceful, yes, but shadowed with the weight of what we'd just learned. I sat by the fire while Emily curled up with a blanket, reading the day's notes. She's been doing this for years, Emily murmured. All those people she fined, intimidated, she probably ruined lives. Not anymore, I said. She's finally getting what's coming. But deep down, I wasn't entirely convinced. Karen had the resilience of poison ivy, you could cut her down, but she'd find a way to grow back. Sure enough, a week later, my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. Jack Hayes, a man's voice asked. Speaking. This is Attorney Cole Sanders. I represent Ms. Mullins. My client claims you're spreading defamatory statements and illegally recording her. I almost laughed. You're joking, right? She trespassed on my land. I'm simply informing you that Ms. Mullins intends to pursue a civil counterclaim if her reputation continues to be damaged publicly. Her reputation? I said, incredulous. She's got a warrant, a pending audit, and an arrest record. I'm aware, he replied smoothly, but she insists she's been targeted unfairly by a conspiracy within the HOA. I hung up before he could finish. Emily glanced up from the sink. Who was that? Her lawyer. She's trying to turn the tables. Emily's expression darkened. Then we keep every record. Every message. If she wants a fight, we fight clean, and we win. Days rolled by, and the investigation picked up steam. Deputies interviewed homeowners, forensic accountants traced money transfers, and the county news station started sniffing around. By early summer, the headlines read, Local HOA under state investigation for fraud, harassment, and misuse of funds. Karen's mugshot was plastered online, her once perfect hair frizzed, eyes wide, defiance frozen into disbelief. Still, something about it felt unfinished. Then Mara called again. You might want to sit down, she said. We just executed a search warrant on the HOA office. Guess what we found? What? Copies of personal data on nearly every homeowner, IDs, tax forms, photos, even banking info. It's identity theft territory. And Karen's computer shows she accessed those files after hours. Emily's eyes widened as she listened on speaker. That's federal. Exactly, Mara replied. We've looped in the FBI's cybercrime unit. They'll handle the digital side. The idea that our nosy HOA president was mixed up in a full-blown data theft scheme was surreal. The woman who fined people for flowerpot colors was running an organized scam. 2 nights later, I couldn't sleep. The air outside felt charged, electric. Around midnight I stepped out onto the porch, coffee mug in hand. The lake shimmered under moonlight, but somewhere across the water, a faint rustle caught my ear, footsteps, too deliberate to be an animal. I set down the mug and reached for the flashlight. When I swung the beam across the tree line, a figure froze between the pines. For a second I thought I was imagining it, but then she moved. Karen? I muttered under my breath. Emily came to the doorway behind me. What is it? Before I could answer, the figure darted into the woods. I ran down the steps, heart hammering. The trail bent around the lake, branches slapping against my sleeves. When I reached the clearing, all that was left was the faint crunch of tires on gravel, an engine revving in the distance. I stared into the dark, breath steaming in the cold air. She was out on bail. And she'd been here. When I got back to the cabin, Emily was pale. We're calling Holt first thing in the morning, she said. We did. Holt filed a new report and forwarded it to Mara. If she's violating bail conditions, she's headed back inside, he assured us. We'll tighten patrols near your road. Still, I couldn't shake the unease. Someone who'd spent years controlling people doesn't surrender easily. A week later we were summoned again, this time to testify before a grand jury. The state had compiled enough evidence to press multiple felony counts: wire fraud, identity theft, harassment, and obstruction. Inside the courthouse, the air was thick with murmurs. Homeowners we recognized from Cedar Pines filled the hallway, some angry, some relieved. A few nodded to us in quiet thanks. When it was our turn, Mara escorted us in. The room felt smaller than I expected: 12 jurors, a judge, a microphone. I told the story from the beginning: the inspection, the trespassing, the footage, the arrest. Emily followed, calm and steady, her voice cutting through the air like glass. When we finished, the prosecutor leaned forward. "Mr. Hayes, you said you believe Ms. Mullins came to your property again after her release?" "Yes, sir." "Do you believe she was trying to intimidate you?" I met his gaze. "I don't believe." "I know." The room fell silent except for the clicking of the recorder. An hour later we were dismissed. Outside, Emily exhaled shakily. "It's over," she whispered. But it wasn't, not yet. That evening, Mara called one last time. Grand jury handed down indictments, 6 counts. But there's more. We traced the fake citations Karen issued. She wasn't acting alone. 2 other board members signed off on them, taking cuts of the fines. "So the whole board's corrupt," I said. "Looks that way. They'll be arrested tonight." Emily closed her eyes, a mix of relief and disbelief washing over her face. After all that, justice. I looked out the window toward the lake, its surface calm again. Took the mountain long enough to breathe again. Mara's tone softened. "You and your wife started a domino effect, Jack. People stopped being scared." I hung up, then turned to Emily. She smiled faintly. "Maybe now we can finally enjoy this place the way we meant to." I wrapped my arm around her shoulders as we watched the last light fade behind the ridgeline. For the first time in months, the silence felt clean: no engines, no footsteps, no clipboard tapping on glass. But as the fire crackled and the night deepened, I caught myself glancing toward the tree line one more time, half expecting to see that silver SUV appear again. Old habits die hard. By midsummer the entire mountain town was buzzing. The Cedar Pines HOA scandal had exploded beyond county lines. Every local news station, every blog that thrived on small-town drama had grabbed it. Reporters parked at the general store, neighbors whispered over coffee, and anyone who had ever paid a single HOA fee suddenly had something to say. Emily and I tried to stay out of the noise. We hadn't asked to become those people who took down the HOA, but that's exactly how folks saw us. Every time I went into town for supplies, someone would slap my shoulder and say, "You're the guy who caught her on camera, right?" The attention felt strange, heavy. Peace and anonymity were the reasons we'd bought the cabin in the first place. Now that peace felt like it had been bartered for headlines. One afternoon, as I was res-tacking lumber near the porch, a black SUV pulled up. A man in a tailored suit stepped out, smooth, confident, city demeanor. He handed me a card. "Evan Ross, Channel 7 Investigative Desk." "Mr. Hayes," he said with a practiced smile, "mind if we ask a few questions on camera? Just to help the public understand how this all unfolded." I shook my head. "No cameras. Not up here." He tried again. "You helped expose corruption that affected hundreds of homeowners. People want to hear your side." "They've already got my side," I said. "It's on record with the state." Emily came out onto the porch, arms folded. We're not turning our home into a news set, Mr. Ross. He raised his hands, backing toward the SUV. Understood. But if you change your mind, we won't, I cut in. When he drove away, the mountain air felt a little lighter again. Still, the chaos in town spilled over into daily life. The HOA office was shuttered, the sign out front torn down by someone during the night. Notices about emergency board elections appeared online, but no one wanted to run. Too much poison in the roots. Then came the letters, emails from residents thanking us for standing up to Karen. One woman wrote, "She fined me for painting my door blue. I cried for a week. Thank you for reminding me she wasn't invincible." Emily saved every message in a folder called Proof that it was worth it. But even with all the goodwill, there was a lingering unease. Mara called occasionally with updates. The investigation had widened, bank accounts in 3 states, dummy vendors, over $100,000 in misused dues. Karen had been denied bail after a second violation, contacting witnesses from jail through burner accounts. I wanted to feel relief, but something inside me refused to settle. People like Karen didn't accept endings, they clawed at them until they unraveled. One evening, rain swept through the mountains, thick and steady. The kind of rain that made the cabin glow warm from the inside. Emily was reading by the fireplace while I grilled dinner under the porch awning. That's when my phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "You think this is over?" "It's not." No name. No context. Just that. I stared at it for a long second, the smell of rain and charcoal mixing in the air. Emily looked up when I came inside. "What's wrong?" I handed her the phone. She read the message, her jaw tightening. "It's her." "She's in jail," I said, though it came out more like a question. Emily's brow furrowed. "Or someone doing her dirty work." We forwarded the message to Holt, who assured us he'd trace it. "Could be another HOA member still loyal to her," he said. "These things have roots." The next day he confirmed it. Text originated from a prepaid phone registered in a nearby county. No name, but plenty of suspicion. For a few weeks after that, things were calm. We fixed the old dock, planted wildflowers near the fence line, tried to reclaim normal life. Every morning I'd make coffee and sit by the lake, watching fog roll across the water, pretending none of it had happened. Then, one night in early August, a deputy's cruiser pulled into the drive. Holt stepped out again, raincoat dripping. "Evening, Jack." "Emily. What's going on?" I asked. He rubbed his jaw. "Karen escaped federal transport." Emily's hand flew to her mouth. "You're joking." "I wish I were." She was being moved to a detention facility for arraignment. Vans stopped for fuel outside Knoxville. She slipped out during the driver change. I felt the air go cold. "You think she'd come here?" Holt's eyes met mine. "If I were a betting man, yeah. You humiliated her on her own turf. She's got reason." He arranged patrols on the access road and told us to keep doors locked. "Call me for anything suspicious," he said before leaving. After he drove off, the forest seemed alive with sound, wind, rain, the creak of branches, but each noise made my pulse spike. The next 48 hours were a blur. Deputies scoured the county, roadblocks went up on the highway, and local radio carried alerts. Still no sign of her. On the third night, a storm rolled in, violent thunder, wind slamming against the windows. Around midnight, the power flickered, then died. Emily lit a lantern while I checked the breaker. That's when I heard it, a faint tap against the back door. At first I thought it was debris from the storm. Then came another, harder this time. Emily whispered, "Jack." I raised a hand, signaling silence. The next sound made my blood run cold, a voice, muffled through the wind. "Let me in, Jack." "Karen." I grabbed the flashlight, heart hammering. Through the rain-blurred glass, I saw her silhouette, soaked hair plastered to her face, eyes wide, clutching something in her hand. "Karen!" I shouted over the wind. "Back away from the door." "You don't understand," she yelled. "They're coming after me too." Emily stood frozen beside the table. "Jack, don't open it." "I didn't." "Who's coming after you?" I called. She shook her head, rainwater streaming down her cheeks. "The board." "It wasn't just me, they're framing me." "You have to help me, please." "Help you?" I snapped. "After everything you did?" Her voice cracked. "You don't know what they're capable of." Then, headlights cut through the trees. A sheriff's SUV skidded up the drive. Holt jumped out with his flashlight and sidearm drawn. "Karen Mullins. Step away from the residence." She turned toward him, panic flaring across her face. "Wait, please, now." Holt barked. Karen dropped whatever she was holding, it clattered onto the porch boards. The deputies moved fast, restraining her, guiding her back through the rain. She screamed something I couldn't make out before the storm swallowed her voice. When they drove away, all that was left was the thing she'd dropped, a folder, soaked through. Emily and I brought it inside, drying it by the fire. Inside were printed spreadsheets, copies of emails, and a list of bank transfers, evidence. She'd stolen HOA files before the arrest. Emily flipped through the pages. She was telling the truth, she whispered. There were others. Payments to shell accounts under different names. I exhaled slowly. Guess even villains have bigger villains above them. By the next morning, Holt returned to collect the folder. This changes things, he said grimly. Looks like she really was just the face of something deeper. We'll hand it over to the state investigators. Watching him drive away again, I felt both vindicated and hollow. The storm had passed, but it left behind a different kind of wreckage, truths that couldn't be unseen. Emily touched my arm. You think she'll finally stop? I looked toward the road disappearing into mist. If she doesn't, the mountain will stop her for us. That evening the power returned. The lake was glass still, reflecting a burnt orange sunset. Emily and I sat on the porch steps, the smell of wet earth hanging in the air. Strange, isn't it? She said softly. We came here for quiet, and somehow ended up in the middle of a war. I nodded. But we made it out. That counts for something. She smiled faintly. Maybe now we can breathe. I reached for her hand. The world around us finally felt still, no engines, no sirens, no clipboard tapping at the door. Just the soft hum of crickets returning after the storm. For the first time in months, I believed the nightmare might actually be ending. Autumn came early to Cedar Pines that year. The maples turned orange before September had even finished stretching awake. The lake, calm and endless, reflected the fire-colored trees like a mirror. From the outside, it looked like the world had gone back to normal. But beneath that calm surface, I could feel the ripples of something deeper, unfinished business that still echoed from Karen's stormy visit. For weeks, we didn't hear anything from Holt or the state investigators. It was almost unsettling how quiet things got. Emily tried to focus on her work remotely from the cabin, and I spent my mornings fixing up the trail that led down to the dock. The silence should have been comforting, but instead it felt tense. Like the woods were holding their breath, waiting for another shoe to drop. One morning, a letter arrived, hand-delivered by courier, sealed in a plain brown envelope. It wasn't addressed to me, but to Emily Hayes. Inside was a single sheet of paper, typed neatly, and signed, "You were right not to trust her. But you don't know who she was working for. Look deeper into the developer contracts for Cedar Pines Estates. Start with the name Havenbrook Holdings. A friend." Emily read it twice before handing it to me. "Jack, what do you think this is?" "I think," I said, "it's the beginning of the next storm." That night, she did some digging. Havenbrook Holdings had been listed as a partner in the HOA's land expansion proposal 2 years earlier, plans to rezone large sections of forest for new construction. But there was no record of the company existing before that. Just a P.O. box address in another state and a single registered agent name, Graham Mullins. Karen's brother. Emily exhaled slowly. She wasn't just pocketing HOA dues. She was protecting someone higher up. I nodded grimly. Which means this whole thing was never about fences or bylaws. It was about land. We turned everything over to Holt the next morning. He looked more tired than usual, dark circles under his eyes. "We're already onto it," he admitted. "Your tip confirms a lot. We've traced funds through Havenbrook to a chain of shell LLCs. It's big, Jack. Bigger than her." "Are we in danger?" Emily asked quietly. Holt hesitated just long enough to make my stomach twist. "We'll keep a car near your property for a while," he said. "Just stay alert." That night, Emily insisted we keep the generator fueled and the security lights on. I didn't argue. When the wind swept through the valley, every creak and crackle set my nerves on edge. But nothing happened, not that night, nor the next. Until 3 nights later. It was just past midnight when the sound of an engine drifted up the drive, slow, deliberate. I looked out the window to see headlights crawling toward the gate. Whoever it was killed the engine before reaching the cabin. Silence fell again, broken only by the rustle of leaves. Emily gripped my arm. "That's not a deputy," she whispered. I grabbed the flashlight and the sidearm Holt had issued me under emergency permit. We moved to the porch quietly, the boards cold under my bare feet. Then came the voice, calm, measured. "Jack Hayes?" I shone the light toward the trees. A man in a dark jacket stepped into view, hands raised. "My name's Daniel Carver. I'm an attorney representing Havenbrook Holdings. I'd like to discuss a private matter regarding the late Ms. Mullins." Emily's breath caught. "Late?" He nodded solemnly. "She's dead. Died in federal custody 2 nights ago. Apparent suicide. The air left my lungs. For a long time, I couldn't say anything." Emily's voice trembled. "You're lying." Carver shook his head. "I wish I were. But her death has complicated certain agreements she made before her arrest. That's why I'm here. To settle unfinished business." He reached into his briefcase, slowly, and pulled out another envelope, this one embossed with legal insignia. "You and your wife are listed as secondary parties in one of her statements. She left a recording. It's being processed for the investigation, but I have a copy for you." Emily and I exchanged a glance before I took the envelope. "We'll review it," I said flatly. "Now leave." Carver inclined his head. "Of course. I'll be in touch." He turned, walking back toward his car, tires crunching over gravel until the sound faded into the trees. We stood in silence until the last echo was gone. Inside, under the warm flicker of lamplight, Emily opened the envelope. A USB drive fell out. No labels. No instructions. "Should we?" she asked. I nodded. "If it's her last word, I want to hear it." We plugged it into the laptop. Static hissed first, then Karen's voice, shaky, low, but unmistakably hers. If you're hearing this, then I didn't make it out. I know what you think of me, and you're not wrong. I did things I shouldn't have. But I wasn't running the show. I was keeping it from turning into something worse. Havenbrook Holdings isn't a company, it's a laundering front for land developers who want to gut Cedar Pines and every HOA like it across the county. I played along because I thought I could control it. But once you're in, you don't get out. They used me as a shield. And when I became a liability, they decided I'd disappear. If I'm gone, look at Graham. He's not dead, he's hiding. The recording ended abruptly, replaced by silence thick enough to choke on. Emily sat back, tears brimming. She knew, she whispered. She tried to warn us. I rubbed my temples. Or she was trying to shift the blame again. Either way, we can't ignore this. We sent the file straight to Holt. He called within the hour. It's genuine, he confirmed. We ran the voice analysis. Her brother's on our radar, but he's off-grid. If you see anything, call me. Weeks passed. The story grew larger. News broke that federal investigators had uncovered a multimillion-dollar real estate fraud network tied to HOAs across 3 states. Havenbrook Holdings was at the center. Karen, for all her wrongs, had indeed been just one cog in a much darker machine. Emily and I watched the coverage from the cabin, our coffee growing cold as reporters threw around words like racketeering and money laundering. Feels like watching the credits after a movie we barely survived, I murmured. She leaned against me. At least it's finally ending. I wanted to believe that. Winter returned with quiet grace. Snow blanketed the porch, the lake froze over, and the woods once again felt like they belonged only to the wind and the deer. One morning, while clearing snow off the steps, I noticed something glinting beneath the porch beam. I brushed away the frost. It was a tiny metal flash drive, no label, no casing, just wedged into the wood. Someone had placed it there. I called Holt immediately. He arrived within the hour, bundled in his coat. "Let's see what you've got," he said. Inside, we plugged it in. Files filled the screen, PDFs, scanned signatures, bank routes. One folder was labeled Cedar Pines Final Plan. Inside was a blueprint, dated 6 months before Karen's arrest. It showed our entire lakefront property marked in red ink, Phase 1 acquisition. Holt exhaled sharply. They were planning to take your land next. Emily covered her mouth. They wanted the lake. I felt a chill deeper than the winter air. And she knew. That's why she came back that night. He nodded slowly. Looks like Karen wasn't the monster in the story anymore. She was the warning. After that discovery, everything moved quickly. The files became key evidence in the federal case. Arrests were made in multiple states. Holt was promoted, and the Cedar Pines HOA was dissolved permanently by court order. The land surrounding our cabin was declared independent property, no association oversight, no dues, no board. Just ours. The peace that followed wasn't loud or triumphant. It was quiet, earned, fragile in its simplicity. On the first warm day of spring, Emily and I walked down to the dock. The lake shimmered, the surface reflecting a sky so blue it looked painted. She squeezed my hand. "Do you ever think about her, Karen?" I nodded. "Sometimes. I think about how people become what they hate trying to control." Emily watched the water ripple. She was wrong about a lot of things. But she wasn't wrong about one: this place is worth protecting. I smiled faintly. "Yeah. It is." We stood there for a long while, listening to the sound of life returning, the birds, the distant trickle of thawing streams, the world beginning again. That night, I lit a fire in the pit near the lake and pulled out the last envelope Holt had left us, a copy of the court order officially closing Cedar Pines HOA. I tossed it into the flames. The paper curled, blackened, then vanished into ash. Emily leaned against my shoulder. Finally free, she whispered. I looked out across the glowing embers reflecting in her eyes. Finally. The wind carried the smoke upward, where it disappeared into the dark. For the first time in what felt like forever, the cabin stood silent, not haunted by rules or fines or voices shouting across property lines. Just home. And though I knew the world outside would always have its Karens, its power plays, its hidden schemes, here, in this small slice of mountain peace, we had won. Not by fighting.
Hope you enjoyed this journey into the world of HOA secrets. Remember, behind every door, there's a story waiting to shock you. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more.